Come on, everybody, clap, give God praise in this place. Come on, Nashville. Welcome to the Full Gospel Baptist Church Fellowship, and as many of you know, we have been doing a series starting in February called Young Preachers, and I've been a part of Full Gospel 26 years, almost 27 years, and it's always been a movement that has made history. So tonight, we are making history again because Young Preachers comes to the Full Gospel Baptist Church Fellowship, everybody. We honor our presiding bishop, Bishop Joseph Warren Walker. And you'll hear from him in just a minute. And so also we honor our founder, Bishop Paul Sylvester Moore, and everybody give God praise for him. Mr. Kevin Adele and the Word Network. I play a double role here because I am a part of Full Gospel and also a part of the Word Network, and so I'm honored to bring young preachers here. We've heard from the young preachers, men and women, then we heard from the young preachers, women, and now tonight, for the first time, we'll hear from a fellowship from their perspective of young preachers. Give God praise again for vision of the Full Gospel Baptist Church Fellowship and our presiding bishop. Sitting on our panel tonight, we have baby boomers, which is my generation. It starts at 54. We have Generation X, 54 and under, and then we have the millennials. And so tonight we're going to mesh all three together, and we're going to find out. I started Young Preachers because I wanted to have a discussion with young preachers. I celebrated 33 years of ministry, and so I wanted to have a discussion. Don't know if it was solving anything. I just wanted to have a discussion and let them have something to say, hear their heart, because many times we talk to them and we don't listen back. And so I wanted to have a discussion. That discussion turned into a movement all over the country. Now, people are talking on the internet. People are talking at their churches. They're talking in coffee shops about young preachers. And so tonight, we bring the discussion to the Full Gospel Baptist Church Fellowship. We welcome tonight to the panel a baby boomer, Bishop Larry Brandon. I remember when we was younger. He is our third presiding bishop, and we thank God for him. Overseer Lisa Weah, who represents the X generation. And I'm going to save the one next to her for last because we honor him tonight. And then, of course, our millennials and over our young adults ministry who asked me to do this program. Overseer Shamond Scales, come on. Our second assistant in our music ministry, and she's no stranger to young preachers. She's been very vocal. She's made her own mark on young preachers. Give it up for Pastor Overseer Miah White. Representing Cali and a part of this fellowship, give God praise again for Pastor Ty Carter, everybody. And we thank God for all of our millennials that are sitting in the background, and they'll have questions throughout the program. Last but not least, our presiding bishop, Bishop Joseph Warren Walker III. So here we go. Bishop Brandon, when we grab your mics. When we started Full Gospel Baptist Church Fellowship, we were younger. We were much younger, 26 years ago. When you look at young preachers then and you look at young preachers now, what do you see the difference 26 years ago when fellowship started?
Well, thank you, Bishop Davis, for having me. Of course, I was born in a significant year, 1965, will go down in history. And I'm grateful for the time that I was born. What I see now versus what I see then, of course, it was unheard of for young preachers to wear jeans and T-shirts and tennis shoes in church. We were all suited down. If you didn't have a necktie. You even became free. You free now. Free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, I'm free at last. But anyway, and that's the difference I've seen. But of course, the passion that I see remains the same. The passion for Jesus Christ, the passion to touch the particular generations, the passion to change the generations positively. And so those are the differences that I've seen. And there's so many others, but that's the main.
What do you, I'm going to stay right there. What's the difference in leading young preachers then and now?
Well, of course, and thank you for the question again, because you're really digging, Bishop Greg Davis. Well, I teach at our church, Touch All Generations, and that is so important. Of course, being a young preacher myself, being led by the older preachers and having the respect, of course, as older preachers. Back then, we respect the older preachers, but sometimes the older preachers didn't respect us. But now what I see is that the younger preachers are respecting, of course, the older preachers, and the older preachers are respecting the younger preachers, and what I've seen, and there's a healthy respect there. And so the difference today, of course, I was younger when I pastored, younger preachers, and now that I'm older, I see my role more of that of a father to really help push the younger preachers. And then I see the hunger for the younger preachers wanting to be fathered, wanting to be pushed. But then we're living in a time where there are those who are acting like Lone Rangers, and even the Lone Ranger had Tonto. Everybody needs somebody. And so, but I believe this dialogue will really help our nation, and not only our nation, but our world.
Bishop Walker, there are a lot of young preachers that I've talked to that say fellowships and organizations are outdated. They're not relevant anymore. Look, Bishop, speak to that, those that are watching across the country, because somebody actually asked me today too. They said, is there any young people at Full Gospel? I'm saying, are you kidding me? And as I came through the hall, I was talking to Sister Henry, and she was like, I just came out of the kids session, and they were in there talking in tongue, they were dancing. Everything. So talk about the relevance of a convention and a fellowship in 2019.
Well, thank you so much again for having this discussion. It is needed, and let me back into that question by answering it this way. And if you look at culture, you look at industry, technology, education, everywhere, people are moving away from these solo kinds of movements. People are doing business in collaboration. Things are happening because community is important. So when you understand collaboration provides space for creatives to expand, to grow, to have platform, then what makes movements significant today and relevant is that movements that shift into collaborative models are attractive. Now, not all movements are attractive. Some movements still operate hierarchically. And so often people are fending for positions and this and that. And when you're trying to do ministry and you're trying to move forward, you don't have time for politics. But if you really are part of, like what we do, we are a fellowship. This is about collaboration. This is about looking at all these extraordinary young preachers behind me. I'm in the X generation, right? So I'm kind of like the uncle, literally. And I see the extraordinary gifts, and I'm like, I need you at the table. I need what you have. The kingdom needs what you have, but you also need what this fellowship provides for you, because there is a level of wisdom, experience that sharpens you. Iron sharpens iron. There's no way you're going to be effective in this day doing ministry all by yourself, because whenever you run into roadblocks, whenever you run into difficult seasons, and you're out there by yourself, you will know you're out there by yourself. Nothing like having a covering.
Right.
And again, I will say it this way. It's important that you connect where you truly feel camaraderie. You feel you can be creative and appreciated, because what you stand under is what you ultimately understand.
Very good. Let me ask the millennials, what has been, Pastor Miah, what has been the benefits? How many years have you been a part of Full Gospel?
26 years.
All right. So you're a Full Gospel baby. Is what
I
we
am
call
a
it.
Full Gospel baby.
What has been the benefit of you being a part of the Full Gospel Baptist Church Fellowship? And then you all can chime in.
Well, to actually kind of piggyback off of what presiding bishop said, Full Gospel has provided for me a global grace. And I believe that it's important to connect with a global grace because it allows you to have the benefits of that grace afforded to you. And like he said, you definitely want to be connected and not be alone. And you'll see when you get out there by yourself. But Full Gospel has given me not only the global grace, but it's also allowed me to build relationships and to be in positions where I'm able to glean from the X generation and the baby boomers. They create an atmosphere that is conducive for millennials to grow. Like Bishop Walker said, he needs some of these people at the table because not only will we be able to get the wisdom from him and those that are at the table, but we can also voice for our generation what we see and how we can contribute to. So Full Gospel provides a space for you to grow and for you to be exposed.
When I think about the benefits, I think about just the fact that we're sitting up here today. Myself, Pastor Miah, Shamond, we grew up together because of this fellowship.
Well, not really. I mean, y'all came behind
You're
me.
older. I mean, you know. She
Actually,
always wanted to make sure.
Actually, I when Bishop Murphy left from the youth division with praise and worship, he turned it over to Devon Murphy and myself. And then when we transitioned, I turned it over to Shamond.
Right.
Y'all sounding old giving history. Look at y'all giving history.
I mean, we've been in this game for 26
Yeah,
years.
yeah.
Like, but yeah.
Yeah.
So finish
Yeah.
your statement. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
I just need to let
Thank
them
you.
know.
Yeah. She always makes sure we understand she's the boss. But yeah, so benefits like that. But then also teachings, understanding accountability, servanthood. The fact where I am today is because of Full Gospel. I was able to work for the founder and the presiding bishop. And so because of that, like she said, global grace, but then also relationships, connections, just understanding ministry in totality and understanding real preaching in the sense of really dividing the word of truth and making sure that you're not being a disgrace to the word of God.
Overseer, you want to add to it? Or you?
They said, y'all said in a nutshell.
But there is one more thing we can't add to that, Bishop, is that a benefit from being connected to Full Gospel and actually being a Full Gospel baby is that we have a distinctive grace on our lives. Those that are like us, that were born in this fellowship, that were brought up, there's a distinct anointing that we have that as we are afforded to travel the country and go and minister at different places, that we recognize that the value that we have been afforded in that grace, in the trainings that we have.
Yeah, we
that
know-
a lot
we know
of
how to
people
act.
don't. A lot of people don't have that. They weren't blessed to be able to
Absolutely.
be trained in many areas of ministry.
I think we were talking about, I was talking to somebody over lunch about that, being a part of the fellowship and being able to travel different places and the people that were raising me. And I come up in the fellowship, I'm just like Miah for over 20 years, and just teaching me not just relationship but diplomacy, how to act in certain rooms, that I know how to do certain things because of being in, which gave me an edge on a lot of preachers that were my age, because we had people that taught us order,
There's a difference.
taught us how to
Absolutely.
act wherever we go, and it's priceless, and we owe it all for being under. So I would tell anybody the benefits as a millennial or younger preacher or younger leader of being under this is you don't know what you don't know. So you need someone that's been there before, and not just been there before, but are at a level that you would like to be at, to be able to show you the way.
I'm going to bring this over here. What does, we're going to switch gears, fathership look like to father a spiritual son or spiritual daughter? What does that look like? Because to so many people, you know, there's so many other things. Some is just a tithe and offering back to the father. But what does that look like?
Well, let me address that. I think there's been, I guess, such an erroneous presentation of that. It's been presented in so many different forms that we don't really have a clear understanding of what that looks like and how it should look. My understanding of that father-son relationship is this, is that it is purely mentoring at its best. It is for a son or a daughter of mine, it is the ability to be in a reciprocal relationship. It is not unilateral. It is, there's an expectation that you have to me, and that's an expectation I have to you. Your expectation to me is to be honest, forthright, to share with me what God is saying to you. And my responsibility to you is to give you what God has given me to say to you, to correct you, to rebuke you. Anytime in the Old Testament when fathers would bring sons into covenant, they would circumcise them. That would be a cutting. I can't father you if you don't let me cut you. The moment I cut you and you run, then we can't really be in a relationship, right? A true father has to cut, has to allow you to bleed sometimes, but you can bleed now. But what I'm saying to you is it's going to help you 5 and 10 years up the road. So for me, it is not, I don't view it as a, and this is important, I'm going to say, I don't view that relationship as transactional. I view it as transformational. So, you know, God's been good to me. And I believe in sowing and all that, but I don't need this to be transactional. Because if it's just purely transactional and you're not getting what you need, that's the frustration. If it's transformational and you see your life evolving and moving and you see your life growing, inevitably you're going to sow back. Yeah. But I don't want to start out like, if I'm going to be your father, this is how this works. No, that's transactional. I think that's where we missed it. If you can pour into these young people, you can follow them and say to them, look, this way and not that way. Or think about this, or let me read that before you do that. Let me look over that. That's transformational. And let me say this as well. In father-son relationships, there's going in father-daughter relationship, there's going to be dissonance. There's going to be disappointment. You're going to have seasons where you fall out, but you're going to have to come back and love on each other. And I'm gonna kill the fatted calf. I'm gonna put the ring on you, and I'm gonna say, "You still my son. You still." And I'm gonna tell the elder brother, "Shut up." Yeah. That's what I'm gonna do, right?
When you can come back and do that, does that validate that that's a true father-son, father-daughter relationship?
Absolutely.
If they stay around after the rebuke?
Absolutely, absolutely. I absolutely believe that.
Okay.
I absolutely believe that.
Bishop Brandon, you want to add to that?
Absolutely. And presiding is definitely on point in regards. And I want to take a step above that. As we father or pastor, we father the individual. I have pastoring sons. I cover them. I mentor them. I don't pastor their churches. They pastor their churches. I oversee them. I encourage them, and I push them. Just like Presiding Bishop said, I remember my 22-year-old, when he was younger, he soiled his diapers. And when he soiled his diapers, I mean, the baby wipes couldn't do this. I had to wipe him down, put him in a tub, wash him up, but then I picked him up again after I pampered him and powdered him and held him and patted him on the back and said, "My son." I didn't throw him away. Oftentimes, there are those who are faced with certain infractions. They are thrown away instead of loved through. And as a father, we love you regardless of what's going on. That's why Presiding Bishop says it's important for you to be transparent, because we'll cover you when others are trying to condemn you.
So from this side, do you agree with everything that they just said? I know this is the Presiding Bishop, but we talking TV, all right?
Absolutely.
Feel free. What are you looking for? What are you, as young preachers, what have you heard out on the streets that, you know,
Well,
other than an engagement and a come up?
I'm going to say this just from experience. I think you also have to understand the type of person that you're under, and I think there's a difference between being fathered and babied. And one of the things you must know is, I think sometimes we expect people to do things for us that we should be developing in our own personal disciplines. And when you have somebody that won't speak to some of the things that you should be seeking God about in your prayer time, and just already know, you can get disappointed. So I think you have to understand, even the person that is over you, their time, respecting their time, respecting that there's certain things that they may not necessarily speak to that you want to speak to. And I don't think that you can tell somebody how to father you. And I think that one of the mistakes, and I've made that mistake before, in expecting somebody to do something or say something that I should have been able to develop in my own personal discipline. But what I do expect is, I do expect that person to have personal insight into my life, which is why it just can't be somebody you like. It has to be somebody that you're connected to. And many times, and I think I spoke about it earlier, I think that we get mentors, some mentors, distant mentors and fathers mixed up. Just because you like the way they preach or you like the way they flow doesn't necessarily mean that they're your spiritual father or the person that is ordained to watch over you. So you have to have somebody with an actual spiritual connection, because if you're a fan of somebody, fans are only there as long as you're doing something that they like. But when you are a follower of somebody, whether you like it or not, you're going to stick with them. So you got to make sure that you're not a son of somebody just because you're a fan of them. You should be a son of them because you follow what's in them.
I want to cover as much as possible, so we're going to move on from that. We got to do this again. But Overseer Lisa, women in ministry, full gospel, how has that transition been into full gospel? And then I want to follow up with the millennial generation. I want to hear from you as Generation X, and then hear from millennial women in ministry. Your perspective.
The Full Gospel Baptist Church Fellowship has been a safe place for women to be trained, groomed, and given platform to exercise our gifts. I'm part of Generation X, so I'm in between the first generation really that broke ground and shattered ceilings, and the generation that's coming after, that many of which will never experience the prejudice and the biases that previous generations experienced. I'm glad to be in a fellowship that's making that transition, and that is embracing it, and that is opening doors for the next generation. The women that we're seeing being birthed, such as Pastor Miah, these are women who are not just oily, but who are preparing themselves, who are studying, who are training, and who are open to instruction. These are women who are not just saying, give me a chance because I'm a woman, but who are saying, I'm preparing myself, and God has called me. Let me stand on the same platform as an equal, not because it's an equal opportunity, but because I deserve the same spot as a man does. I can do it.
Follow up, millennial.
Well, I would definitely agree with that, but as a millennial, I grew up watching women preachers in full gospel, and so to me, it's foreign for a woman not to be accepted as a preacher, because I've seen Dr. Aretha Morton, I've seen Bishop Cheryl Brown, I used to watch Pastor Kim preach and Pastor Deborah when I was a young girl, and they would just wreck conference like nobody's business. Like I own full gospel, you know what I mean? Like they made their stamp, and so they let it be known then that you can be pretty, you can be powerful, and you can be feminine, and you can preach the gospel and open your mouth and cut the atmosphere like with a two-edged sword. And so that's all I know. And so I'm standing on the shoulders of all of those women that have gone before me and prepared the way. And so I feel as a millennial female preacher that it's my due diligence to continue to honor their sacrifice and continue to blaze the trail and push through. And I thank God that Full Gospel continues to open the doors, or open many more doors for women to continue to thrive in ministry.
If you just tuned in to the Word Network, you're watching Young Preachers, the Full Gospel Baptist Church Fellowship edition in Nashville. Give God praise for those that are watching, everybody. We're halfway there almost. So I was talking to Bishop Robinson's wife, Lady Robinson, co-pastor Robinson, last night at the musical. And this is the statement she made. This is directed to you all. She said she was talking to a millennial, sharing a conversation, and how millennials feel like, and we kind of touched this on the first one, that they don't know nothing about struggle, just in general. The millennial told, we don't know nothing about struggle, because they become instant millionaires overnight. One girl went online, and I forget what she was selling. She was a millionaire in one evening. They don't know about struggle. They don't know about process. This is kind of what they say about y'all, too. Are you all absent? Why y'all laughing? Why y'all smiling? Why you looking at me foreign? Are y'all absent of the struggle and the process? I'm just saying what Lady Robinson said to me. I'm asking for a friend.
I don't think we're absent from the process and the struggle. I just think it's different. Our process and our struggle is different from the process and struggle of Generation X and the baby boomers. And I believe that I wouldn't say that it's easier. It's just different. It looks different. It feels different, and we have to navigate through it different. But I don't believe that we're absent.
And I also think it would be crazy for us not to have learned from the generation before, from the mistakes that we saw them make, so we don't have to make those same mistakes, so we don't have those same struggles that we have seen.
But you're not absent of the struggle.
We're not absent of struggle. We have our own struggles. It's
Okay.
just, I don't know if we are mirroring it differently. But
Yeah, y'all just walk away. Y'all
but
like,
it's
I
just-
ain't just saying.
Yeah, I think we, because, the generation, you all's generation before us have taught us self-worth and how we don't have to settle and how we can go forth and do this. You're the head and not the tail, and you push that down to us and really imparted that. So then now we don't settle. So if it doesn't work and we've been educated, we're moving on to the next, and we're going to open up a door that God, of course, is opening, but we're going to go to another door that's open so that we can continue to do what we're called to do without being disloyal to.
You want to add just 30 seconds?
I actually think that they are the same struggles. And I think because that's the only way we can get wisdom on our struggles. I think that in Bishop, I can kind of speak to this because I'm Bishop's church plant. So there were some things that maybe I thought from a generational standpoint that he didn't understand, or, that there was a barrier there. And later on down the line, this is my 8th year pastoring, even though he was going through it 20 years before me, it was the exact same thing, because people are people. And especially when you're, as a pastor, and you're dealing with people, problems are problems, struggles are struggles. And I think they have to be the same, because if they weren't the same, then there's no transfer of wisdom, because then that's to say, well, you can't tell me nothing because you hadn't been through it. I just think maybe we're in a different time, but I think it's the same struggles. And I think that you learn that the hard way once you get further down the line.
Let me ask. I'm really asking for me. I'm not gonna say it for a friend. It seems like, and I've asked people this and nobody give a straight answer. It seems like we hear more about this generation than any generation. We didn't hear about, well, I'm a baby boomer, so we wouldn't have heard about it. They weren't making that much fuss about us, or even X. Seemed like it's more. Why do you think this, or any one of you, this generation has talked about more than any generation since we've been living, in my opinion?
Well, it's a unique generation for a variety of reasons. One is this is a generation, every generation was told, go to college, get a degree, and you get a job, you follow the process, and things will happen. This is the first generation. They did all those things, and then nothing happened, okay? So what this generation was forced to do was to create, because systems were no longer embracing them.
That's good.
Okay, so now you have a generation that's operating outside of a system, right? So they have to vacillate. Do I want to be a part of this system? They didn't want me, right? Very few systems want them, right? So now we have to create this space. That's why you see social media. You see so many people creating these multi-million-dollar ventures and et cetera. The other part of that is that this is a generation in terms of ministers and pastors, young pastors. In this generation, our struggle was fighting people are trying to get people to work together who want to stay in church. They are dealing with people who don't want to be in church.
Right. No, that's good. That's good.
You get it? So their struggle, you know, I honestly pray for that generation because it was different. For me, I'm dealing with people, some of them I wish would leave early on. No, really. I was like, just go, right? So my church grew because people wanted to stay and it just continued to pile on. People were coming to church. People were coming and coming and coming and coming. Here's a generation of people are leaving and leaving and leaving. And you have these young pastors here, people who are pursuing ministries and creating ministries and want to be pastors. They're looking at this like, okay, why don't people come to church? So I'm trying to evangelize, and I'm trying to get folks excited about this thing. Well, here it goes. It goes right back to the people view the system that rejected them, the system that rejected them, right? So now you have a whole generation now who feels like they're like in this wilderness space. And so that's why they're talked about the most, because they're an experiment. It's like an experiment in culture. And the demand on this generation now, and I'll just say this, the demand on this generation is that this generation has to create sustainable content to pass to another generation. This generation has to think about its literature, its music, its theology, because every generation before that transferred something back. This generation now has to really, that's why it's so important to have these incredible folks up here, because you have to think about that. Like, what will this generation leave for the next generation?
Right.
That is going to be the only thing that's going to sustain, because if this generation doesn't get it, if this generation of leaders up here don't get it, don't sustain these folks, and the generation behind them, it's going to be much
You want to
worse.
write quick?
Well, I want to ask a question that I think maybe everybody up here would like to ask. Okay, with that being said, what you said, Bishop, is absolutely true. So with that being said, our expectations or our success of ministry looks like your generation, right? So you pastor the generation that's coming to church. So we view success from that lens. So that is our measurement. So when we're dealing with a generation that doesn't want to come, there's a discouragement that comes amongst us as pastors, and like we're doing the wrong thing because we're not seeing the level of success or as fast. What do you say about the measurement of success? I already kind of know what you're going to say, but I want to know what you have to say, because I think
He's setting you up.
I think they need to hear, what does that measurement of success, or how should you measure success to our generation since we're ministering to different people?
Well, let's be very clear. Your generation cannot measure success by butts and seats. Right. If you are looking at, and you know, in our generation, the generation before me, it was all in the hallway. Man, you couldn't get in there. It was your whole ministerial self-esteem was based on numerical growth, right? You have to begin to think about, again, it goes to transformational, innovative kinds of ministry. Finding your niche, finding what works, right? At the end of the day, those of us who pastor mega churches, right? We got mega budgets. We got mega problems. Do you understand? There's no way in 2019, if I were in your shoes, I would build what I built back then.
I hear many say that.
I would never do it. Not now. I wouldn't do it. I would build much smaller. I would build, because the average person who comes to church as a faithful member of our churches comes once every 6 weeks. I don't measure footprints anymore. I measure fingerprints. I look at the virtual space. I maximize Mount Zion Anywhere. I maximize social media. Social media. I'm good. I maximize social media, and I do all of that. You have to understand, you're creative enough to do something that's never been done before. One of the things I train, and I'm mentoring somebody on this stage right now, and I tell them all the time, you got to learn to do ministry in the white space. That means you got to figure out, you got to do what God did. God stepped out on nothing and created something. You got to be comfortable in your own ministerial identity and stop competing with it. Please do this. Bishop Jakes told me this. Please do this. Don't compete with me. Enjoy the distance. Promise you. Enjoy the distance.
Bishop, I want to go over here now. This question was asked this morning in the hallway. Somebody gave me this. Young man said, the one who trained him is at retirement age, but don't want to move. Not effective no more. Not open to change. Not a pastor though, but just someone that is an elder, somebody that trained, mentored him. What do you do when a person don't want to move and you have other capable people and actually people that train you and don't know how to turn over, and you all could just add in? Bishop, you want to start? Bishop Brandon? No, go ahead. You can start.
Well, I can't say that, I appreciate the question. I wouldn't say, I should say, that the person is no longer effective. The person is effective, the older person is. However, as it relates to movement, we, in the African American community, we're poor as a whole as it relates to succession planning, knowing when to step aside, to advise, to oversee, to push. We're so concerned about being sages on the stages instead of being guys on the side. And so if we would really learn that principle and then practice it, succession planning, then it would be very smooth for us to move to the next level. And just like Bishop stated, competition, there's no competition in the Holy Ghost. And so if I'm older than you, I'm not competing with you, and you shouldn't be competing with me. It's just like my biologicals competing with me. They can never compete with me, and I will not compete with them at their level. We have a healthy respect for each other. And so I believe succession planning, knowing when to step aside to allow fresh breath or fresh perspective to take over, and then stand by the person and walk alongside of them.
Okay, let's add to this. Let's make it more interesting too. Bishop, because I know you can answer this well. I'm like Shamond, I know you can answer this one well. How do, kind of in the same vein, how do we preserve the old and embrace the new? Still, we build on foundation.
I get it. It is, and I've written about this on numerous occasions. You cannot be focused so much on destiny that you forsake history.
That's good.
It is important to understand that change in any organization brings anxiety. Listen, whenever you get older, it brings anxiety. That anxiety creates stress. That stress causes you to think about your own significance, your mortality. There are people in your ministry who are older. You come in with all these great ideas, and they are great. I've been there. I went to a church, 60 people, and my youth ministry was 50 years old. And when I went there, I had to be mindful of something. How does this change that I impose upon these people automatically pile on to the pre-existing anxieties they have about their own change? Like, those of you sitting behind me, enjoy the youth days you're doing now. The day gonna come when you're not gonna get those youth day invitations no more. And the moment you stop getting youth day invitations, you're gonna realize you're changing. Everybody's gonna change. You ain't gonna be a millennial forever. You're gonna change. That's gonna bring stress. So people grieve the loss of things as they once knew it.
That's good.
And you have to allow people, when they're in a significant shift and change, when you're imposing change on organizations, allow people to grieve that and create space for them to be validated, repositioned, and honored while you are still implementing the new change. If you come in like this dude who gets on the horse and the old man says, wait a minute, you can't do it. He says, I can. He says, I want to ride the chariot just like you. He says, young man, you can't. You can't. He says, young man, you can't do it. He says, go head on. The young preacher got on it, took out the whip, hit the horse, and the thing went right down the hill, fell over on the young man. The older man walked down and said, you all right? He was bloody. He said, what did I do wrong? He said, you took the whip before you got the reins.
See, that's good. That's good.
You are called to become the pastor.
Become. That's good.
It will be a while before you become the pastor. In your mind, you're the pastor now. I get that. No, you're not. You are becoming the pastor because they will never trust your hand until they know your heart.
All right, give it up for our presiding bishop.
I can witness to what. So I had, and I guess I kind of had some cheat codes because me and Bishop, when I started pastoring the church, and he told me something that kind of hurt my feelings on the onset, but I saw it later on. He told me, he said, because I've been preaching, in October I'll turn 30, I've been preaching for 20 years. And he told me, he said, you're about to get to an age where you're not going to be special anymore. He said, because you are a prodigy. And he said, your age is about to wear off you. And you're going to have to start preparing yourself because you're about to get into a category to where the boy preacher is not going to matter anymore. And when he says enjoy those times, I promise you, enjoy the youth days. And because there comes a time to where that the excuses that were able to be made and different, you can't make them anymore. Your youth, not studying like you need to, not dealing with people the way you need to. And there's going to be a time, especially when you're young, the gimmick's going to come off you. And you're going to have to be prepared for real people and real ministry.
Anything else on that? Okay.
I just wanted to
yes, ma'am.
add, I think we don't do enough celebrating and maximizing the different generations that we have in our churches. We don't spend enough time looking at what each generation brings to the table so that every generation can be appreciated and celebrated for what they're supposed to do. I hear from so many millennials who are saying, I just need a chance, if they would just give me a chance, but they feel like the older generation is trying to keep them in their place until such a time as they decide when they should be released.
Okay. I don't want to stop, but let me stay right there because you're a prophet. Because my next question was going to be, how do you manage multi-generations of preachers and still meet the needs of all? You can.
Okay, all right. And so I think that when we look at the wisdom, the experience, the understanding that each generation brings to the table, if I get up to preach, I can't preach from the millennials' viewpoint because I'm not a millennial. I can relate to everybody in my church, but everybody preaches from a certain context. And so I think that if we spent more time celebrating and appreciating the different seasons of life we're in, then nobody feels like they have to hold somebody back, and then nobody will end up feeling like they're being put on hold until the older generation all retires, because who knows when the older generation will all retire. There's a place in the kingdom for everybody. The kingdom's big enough for everybody. And just as we need both the male and the female voice, we need every generation to speak forth into such a time as this.
So I'm always getting, since I started this young preacher piece, I'm always getting DMs and inboxes. And probably one of the number one questions is, what do I do if they just won't use me? I mean, and being treated bad. And so what do? Do you stay or do you leave? When does it become neglect and abuse?
Well, Bishop, first of all, having a true conversation, because there are those who pout and cry, but they never voice their feelings. And so it's important to have a true conversation, and I hope the dialogue is open intergenerationally, as I mentioned before, touching all generation. I hope the dialogue is that everyone basically has a seat at the table for real. I know nothing about Cardi B, but because of our young people sharing as relates to who Cardi B is, I can use a little, not much of her messages in my sermons. Hallelujah. Yes, indeed. But I can talk about catching flights, and what have you. And I still don't know what that means. But anyway, I'll leave that right there.
You just put yourself out there now.
I still don't know what that means. But anyway, making sure
that you riding your convertible on your Instagram.
I'm done.
saw you.
Flat line. But anyway, but making sure that each generation have a true seat at the table and their concerns are voiced, and we're listening with an open heart through through the lenses and through the ears of love. And so, because if we're going to perpetuate, if we're going to continue, we have to pour into and we have to listen to, because if I don't know what your needs are, then I can't meet those needs. I can go to the physician all day long, but if I never share what I'm going through, then that physician won't be able to serve me properly. So making sure the table is open dialogue. And again, we boomers and older, we have to do a better job with making sure that that everyone has a seat at the table.
We have about 10 minutes left. I want to get to this question because I'm very transparent. I mean, this is my family for 27 years. I went through divorce right here in fellowship, and Pastor Kim Davis, as you spoke about, she's still here. I'm saying because we both helped to build this. So we kind of got out of balance. You know, it was ministry first rather than, you know, in the old church they taught you, don't y'all sit there and look at me, in the old church they taught you that it was ministry first and then family. Family was somewhere down the line. So the question that I have is, and Bishop Walker, I want you to start with this because you manage a whole lot. So, but I noticed that you've been taking vacations. I saw the pictures. How can young ministers build their ministries without jeopardizing their marriage and their families?
Well, I think it's critical. First of all, you have to make sure that everything that you are doing is in proper alignment to your call. Okay, family has to be first. But what I mean by this is, God calls Moses out of a bush that's on fire. The fire is consuming it, but the fire is burning, but not consuming it. And God gave me a revelation that when I call you, have a burning for it, but never let it burn you out.
That's good. Wow.
The moment something burns you out, you stepped out of alignment to the original call. We place all these spiritual jargons and theological phrases around stuff to try to make it seem like this is what God's calling us to do when we're out of alignment. So every assignment, every preaching engagement, everything somebody asks you to do, that may not be what God wants you to do. You have to find out what your yes is in God. And then you have to create boundaries. You have to create boundaries around your family, boundaries around your time. See, every second, every minute, every hour for me is so significant. That's why I don't spend it with people who waste their time. I don't take invitations just to be going to try to be popular. You ain't got time to be running around the country, stressed out, tired, running from hotel. That stuff gets old. I go because I'm assigned to go.
Absolutely.
And I have a family, I have children. I'm not going to miss my child's, recital because I'm trying to get to do somebody's service. And if it works, fine. So I let everything move around that orbit for me. I believe that everything in my life moves around the orbit of my family. Everything in my life moves around the orbit of my family because that's my first assignment, that's my first ministry. And I am not going to grow up and be that guy that my children hate the church, right?
That's good.
So as I've done that alignment, my ministry has gone into a whole nother gear. My marriage, my kids, my life, I'm freer. I preside over this fellowship with no stress because I feel this way. If you're a leader and you have people who work for you, and if you have to do what they're doing, somebody's not necessary. And guess who ain't going nowhere?
That's good.
Bishop Randall,
That's good.
want to add to it?
I cannot follow that. Yes, ditto. Ditto. Yes.
Question, pass the mic to him. Yes. Stand up and ask it.
Alrighty, so my question is about the ministry of reconciliation. We talked about sons and fathers who separate. And for some, it's easy to just have a conversation, but for some, there are so many still children that are out there because that ministry of reconciliation seems hard to do. So my question for you all is, how then, even if it's been years, if it's been months, or even if it's been days, how then do fathers and sons or fathers and daughters really come back together even after there has been a life-altering rip and or break?
There has to be, at some point, that conversation. you cannot repair the rift until you're willing to address the rift. We bury so many things, and then we, neither side accepting blame for whatever their role in it was. It was their fault. No, it was their fault. Sometimes you need to take some time and just examine yourself. And then once both parties have examined self, then there has to be a conversation. And if we're not willing to be transparent and honest, then it's not time for the conversation.
Who's next? Quickly.
All right, I have a question. As a young preacher or a millennial, how do you manage proper development when you don't have a father, or you don't have a Bishop Brandon or a Bishop Walker in your midst to give you insight and wisdom from?
Well, it's good that you're connected to the Full Gospel Baptist Church Fellowship because there are so many
Absolutely.
mentors that you can connect with. And, you know, the challenge is just finding, you know, the right person, and you pray about it and you make connections and relationships. But there's so many persons right here in the fellowship who have so much to offer, and, you know, just knowing what you're looking for in a mentor, and then praying about how to connect with the right person. But I don't believe there's anybody in the fellowship who's not open to sharing what God has put in them with someone else.
But I appreciate the question, especially dealing with a worldwide generation, worldwide television. I would, those who are watching, whatever area you're in, if you don't feel like you're getting it, pray about it, because God will help you. I believe I'm healthy, but I also take vitamins as supplements. And so God will allow you to have supplements, and there may be those who are watching that are outside of Full Gospel. They're not part of any Reformation, but they can find supplements such as Overseer mentioned, right here at Full Gospel. They can call us, get in touch with them, and we can help them through the process. We've got great leaders in the young adult ministry and what have you. Just find a supplement, but you got to be careful, because you really don't want to disrespect whoever your particular covering is. So you have to have definitely prayer, be prayerful in your decision making.
And then just from the other side is pray and ask God to lead you to the person. And mentors, as we've been discussing mentoring and father, you know, you can get a mentor and they can mentor you from afar because you're watching how they're moving. But as far as fathering someone to cover you, pray and ask God who's anointed to unwrap you. Because just because you like them doesn't mean that they're assigned to unwrap you. And so I believe that God has given us everything that we need in this fellowship, and so he will lead you if you ask him to open your eyes to see and to open that connection. I believe that they'll be open to definitely.
We're going to take one more question, and then we're going to wrap it up with something I want to ask. Yes, sir.
My question is, there's varying levels of success on the stage, and I would just ask that one of you would talk to, how do you manage, or how do young preachers across the country manage that hunger or that desire for success, but with keeping the proper perspective as it relates to ministry? You want to be successful, you want to be productive and efficient. How do you manage your success level being effective?
I'll let one in, because I never sought out to be successful. I just set out to be effective and serve. I really feel like I served my way where I'm at today, but that's just my opinion. So I'm going to leave that to the presiding bishop.
I think it's important to define what success is for you.
Yes.
And once you define what that is, I think then you have measurables, and you then look at it, and you don't live comparatively. You just look at it from that perspective. I would hasten to say, seek significance over success. Significance is more sustainable.
That's good. That's good.
Bishop, I want to start with Bishop Brandon. I'm going to go down the line. If you look at the young preachers right now, I want you to say this: dear young preacher, what? What would you say? Are you leaving a letter? Short letter.
Asking
sentence.
them?
No, dear young preacher, you're making a statement to them.
Oh, I'm making a statement.
Yeah, dear young preacher.
Dear young preachers, especially those on the stage and here, continue doing what you're doing. Continue to have the conversations, respect for the former generation. That's what I'll say, dear young preacher, in short.
Dear young preacher, I am excited about you, and I look forward to what God is going to do in this time through you. stay connected to a covering, and work on being the best you that God created you to be.
Bishop.
Dear young preacher, I sit before you as a presiding bishop of a Reformation, the most amazing Reformations on the planet, pastoring one of the greatest churches in America. My Instagram is Joseph Walker 3. My name is Joseph. And I am here for you. I am not too busy. I am a different kind of leader. I'm relational. And I said that to say to you, don't assume people in my position don't have time for you. What I don't have time for is people who are trifling. If you,
Yes. Yes, yes,
if
yes.
You, if you want
To
it,
the man.
if you want it, I'm here.
All right, I'm gonna go this way, and because you all are seasoned, and I know you all, I trust you with it. You got about 20 seconds. Dear young preacher that's watching, as a word of encouragement from another young preacher.
Dear young preacher, listen and learn and wait for your season to come. And while you're waiting on your season, prepare yourself to be the best version of yourself you can be.
Dear young preacher, don't be trifling. I just
No, knowing you meant it.
I did mean it. Don't be trifling, but keep the main thing the main thing. Stay in God's face and stay on your face so that as God gives you vision and God allows you to be exposed to go forward and do what it is that he's called you to do, that you don't forget about God in the equation. Keep God first.
That's good.
Dear young preacher, you and your voice matter. Do not give up.
That's good.
All right, give it up for our panel. I want to thank, come on, will you help? I want to thank, first of all, Bishop Walker for allowing us to do this. Overseer Shamond came and sat in our young preachers show, and he wanted to do this. It's the first fellowship, first conference to do this. Also, those of you that are watching, I want you to text so many, over 1,100 young preachers get a text from me daily. I want you to text us at Young Preacher to 41411, Young Preacher to 41411, and get your daily dose of encouragement. Also, you can follow us at Young Preacher The Movement. Young Preacher The Movement. Information about the Full Gospel Baptist Church Fellowship. Bishop Walker already told you how you can reach him. Go and connect. If it's not full gospel, which is the best, but if it's not, find somewhere to be connected. We'll see you next time. We're on our way to Vegas for the Young Preacher. Give God praise, everybody. The Word Network.